Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the dystopian version of the Dice Tower. You will buy the games we recommend. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at The Expanse from WizKids. In The Expanse from WizKids, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of the various factions from the Expanse TV show, formerly on Sci-Fi, but recently picked up by Amazon. Now, the factions you can play are the United Nations, which represents Earth. You've got the Martian Congressional Republic, which of course is Mars. You've got the OPA, the Outer Planets Alliance, which of course represents people living out in the belt and on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. And then you have the Protogen, which of course is this mysterious extraterrestrial molecule vying for control as well. The board is a map of the solar system. You're going to see that it's divided into 3 bands. The first band is the inner planets, where Earth and Mars exist. Then you've got the belt, where the various bases along the asteroid belt exist. And then you have the outer planets, which are the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Now, these are very important, and because each of these areas has various bases. And in the game, you're going to be vying for control of these various bases during scoring sessions. Now, each of the bands is going to have a number of bases in them. Now, the bases will have an orbit above them. Bases are where your influence is going to go. The orbit is where your fleets go. Now, some orbits will have multiple bases within them. Some orbits just have one base in them. And this is going to be important as the game progresses. Each player is going to get a number of influence cubes. You're going to put 1 influence cube on the 10 spot of the CP track. CP is both your victory points and your currency during the game. You're each going to put a number of your influence cubes and fleets in the various bases and orbits, depending on what your player card says. The player who goes last will also take the Rosinante, I can't remember how it's pronounced, Don Quixote's horse. That's the spaceship, of course, that's in the show. They're going to place that next to their player screen, their player faction sheet. And then, of course, you are also going to get a number of kind of face-down technologies that will be able to be revealed throughout the game. Now, the player with the Rosante faction sheet also will get the token for the ship that will move, and it will act kind of like one of your fleets, but it can also be used for some different things over the course of the game. Now, there are a number of cards in the game, and you're going to prepare the deck so that you've got some scoring cards that are going to come out at certain times. You're going to place these decks, next to the board, and you're going to reveal 5 of the cards. Now, the cards, when they come out, are going to have point values associated with them. For instance, the first slot is worth 0. Anybody can just take that card. Second slot costs 1 for everybody except Earth. They can take it for 0. The next one's like 1, then it's like 2. So depending on where the cards are in the slot, they're going to cost more money to take. And so what you're going to do is on your turn, you can take one of these cards, spending the appropriate CP if applicable. And then you have a choice. You can either play the card for its point value, and the action point values let you do things like place cubes in areas where you have fleets, or move groups of fleets, or maybe some other kind of faction-specific things that will come up with the cards. But these are the basic things you can do with action points, or you can play it for the event. Now, the event can be kind of some mean things, removing other players' influence, or spreading your own, or moving fleets, etc., things like that. But if you decide to do it for the action points, then in initiative order, players have the option of activating it if their faction is represented on the card. Then other players can go ahead and activate it, and they can do the event there. So you got to be careful how you use those cards when you purchase them. Critically, too, you can also choose to pay a CP to bank that card. Essentially, put it aside to play it later. And then on your turn at a later point, you can actually play the event from that card. Now, as I say, embedded within that deck of cards, eventually scoring cards are going to come out. Now, these act just like other cards. You have to buy them if they're in the higher spots. Eventually, they become to the point where they don't cost anything. So it can be advantageous, the timing of when somebody wants to activate scoring. Now, once you activate a scoring card, the player who did it is going to choose which band is going to get a special bonus. Now, obviously, they're going to pick where they're ahead. So they're secretly going to select this bonus, although it can be pretty obvious, seeing kind of where it's most advantageous for them to pick at a certain time, though timing is important here too. They're going to go ahead, they're going to select that secret bonus, and then you're going to go through and see who has control of all of the bases on the board. Now, most of the time, if you control a base, it's just going to be worth 1 point, but in that bonus, it's going to be worth multiple points, and then second and third place may get points as well. Also during scoring, players will have opportunities to play kind of kept event cards. They will also have the opportunity to activate the Rosante's special abilities. There's like 4 special actions they can do, and you can activate one of them right before scoring. To control a base, you need to have a majority of cubes. If it's a tie, if you have a fleet in orbit, or if you have more fleets in orbit, then you have kind of orbital supremacy. That's kind of a tiebreaker. But that's essentially how you gain command control of these bases for scoring purposes. So you go through, you score each of the bands, of course giving that special bonus to whichever one was selected by the active player, and then you go ahead and add up all of the points. Whoever has the lowest points at that point, they then get control of the Rosante, the spaceship. So you essentially go around and around, placing cubes, trying to gain control of these systems, buying cards, activating either the event or the action points in order to try to gain influence over these bases. You're trying to critically watch for the most opportune moment to play those scoring cards and hope that your opponents don't play one that's disadvantageous to you, and then try to manipulate those bonuses as best you can to gain the most points. Now, after the 6th scoring card is played, you go ahead, you add up all of the points for that round. Whoever has the most CP at that point wins the Expanse. So, the Expanse TV show, I just recently started watching. I'm about halfway through the 2nd season. I got a few episodes to go in the 2nd season. And, you know, I've enjoyed it. I think it's a pretty good show. It takes a while to get into. It was pretty slow starting, but I ended up kind of enjoying the show, and I think it's pretty neat. And, you know, hey, space Mormons. But it's a good show. It's a fun show, a good science fiction show. And you can tell they're trying to go for that same kind of gritty feel that Battlestar Galactica had for sci-fi. So that's pretty interesting. I love Battlestar Galactica, which is a better show than The Expanse, but I do enjoy The Expanse quite a bit. So is the game thematic, first of all? And the answer is a little bit. I mean, certainly there's some of the events and the way kind of the power kind of goes back and forth throughout the band. That's kind of very evocative of it. Beyond that, it feels almost kind of like the theme is not terribly important. It feels like this is a game that could just as easily have had a different theme, and it would have worked just as well. I mean, if you really like The Expanse, you may enjoy, you know, it's got screenshots, which I don't mind. I know a lot of people have a problem with that. I don't mind screenshots. Some people will really get a kick out of that, you know, just further drawing them into the world of The Expanse. For me, excuse me, I didn't feel it was terribly thematic. It's just not. And one of the things, too, that made it not terribly thematic is you have the 3 factions of the OPA, Earth, and Mars, and then you have the Protogen as its own faction, which kind of just behaves just like the other planets and gaining influence. To me, that did not feel thematic at all. I almost wish there was another 4th faction, and that the Protogen was some kind of mechanic that could just come in and disrupt things, you know, maybe randomly or something like that. I think that would have been a better mechanic, in my opinion. You know, 4th faction, Space Mormons. It'd be great. Despite the fact that it's not terribly thematic, I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was fun. It's a good area control game. I love area control games. But what makes this game, I think, really a lot of fun is the meanness of this game. It is a mean game, because when you're playing those event cards, you're screwing people up. I mean, you're trying to develop a strategy, you're trying to work out how to manipulate the board to benefit you, but then you play those event cards that just twist and bend what somebody else was trying to do, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that aspect of the game as well. I mean, that to me made the game. It's a good solid area control game, and I think it's fun. And I think too, because I don't think it's excessively thematic, I think it's pretty accessible. I think people who are not really familiar with the Expanse can play this game and still really get into it. I don't think you need a deep knowledge of the game. I mean, the events pretty much just say, things like move this cube here, or fleets, or kind of do this option, do that option. They're very, telling you what to do. But other than the screenshot, maybe the title of the card, it doesn't really evoke, as I say, anything from the TV show. So, it's not thematic, but it's still good. And again, I think that could be a plus to people who maybe are interested in the game as a game and not so much as a TV show. It's accessible that way. So I like it. I think this is a fun area control game, and I do like the science fiction theme regardless. So, ladies and gentlemen, the recommendation for the Discriminating Gamer for The Expanse is buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and ladies and gentlemen, one of the factions here is the OPA, the Outer Planets Alliance or Association. And I gotta tell you something, I always kind of thought in the back of my head it made more sense that it was Andy Griffith's son, only Canadian. OPA.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I've been dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
In all seriousness, this means so much to me. I promised myself I wouldn't do this.